Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our podcast. We are in a very good mood because we have amazing music for you today with a wonderful composer, and we will talk about this. Wow, what amazing music, huh? Did you recognize it, Jens?
I've heard that music before.
Oh, really? Honestly, yes, I also heard this music before. We are talking about, as I've seen, Miklós Rózsa, a film composer who wanted to be also a serious music composer, or a serious music composer who had to do film composition. This is the question.
It's also the question that Rózsa himself deals with in his biography, which is very colorful, a double life, very funny. Can't believe everything that's in there, but a lot of it is true, probably.
It's written by himself?
Yeah, he wrote it himself.
Ah, okay.
And it's very funny because he obviously is nice about the people he liked, but he gets in little jibes, you know.
Okay.
His countryman George Ligeti, he gets a little dig in at.
Okay.
He doesn't the endless homophonous pianissimos he complained about. Because Rózsa had a much more conservative style. But the idea is, like every composer of the 20th century, classical composer, not every, but most, he did both. He wrote for the film industry and he wrote, proper or concert music. Like Shostakovich, like Vaughan Williams.
But when he started in Budapest, for that he was a normal, how to say, I cannot say normal composer, there's not an unnormal composer, but he composed mostly classical things then, no?
Yeah, I think he started composing in Leipzig, where he studied chemistry first, because his father wanted him to learn something proper. It's the usual story. And then allegedly one of his benchmate blew himself up in chemistry class. And that helped convince his father that it's okay for him to go to the conservatory instead. And he started writing regular concert music. But then he went to Paris after his Leipzig days were over, and he kept composing. He was reasonably successful among people in the know. He was well liked among composers. He was considered to be a talent, but he was poor. He didn't make any money. And Marcel Dupré and then Honecker gave him the idea, hey, do what I do, write for the movies or write for the Pathé reels, little blurbs, basically, just musical ones. And he did, and he started doing that under a pseudonym, Nick Tomei.
Okay.
Because he wanted to be a serious composer, and that was just the money. But that essentially started what he then called his double life, named after one of the films for which he later would write the music, and for which he got an Academy Award, a double life. And unlike other composers, like Shostakovich, I would say, Shostakovich was never aware or didn't care about whether he was seen as a film composer or a serious composer. In the West, we know him as a serious composer. Rózsa was very aware of that, and he didn't initially want to be known as a film composer, but eventually his music for film became so famous.
And he got 3 Oscars, no?
3 Academy Awards.
Wow, 3 Academy Awards. Yeah.
I think that's one more than Korngold even.
It was for Ben-Hur, no? Ben-Hur, Quo Vadis.
No, I think it was for Spellbound. It was for A Double Life and Ben-Hur.
And Ben-Hur, okay.
Those 3.
But we concentrated now on something totally different because we wanted to focus now on the, let's say, serial classical composer or his serial classical compositions.
Serious.
Serious, not serious.
Definitely not Syria.
Yeah, serious classical compositions. Yeah, I mean, also sorry to say, but also movie music is something very serious. I mean, it has to do. But in this point, I think he had a little complex. No, he always wanted to be also well known as a symphonist.
I think yes, he was just more keenly aware of that not happening to the extent. And, but I mean, Nino Rota is a nice analogy, because Rota was also extremely well known for his film music and not as well known for his opera or for his concert music. And that was probably a sign of the times.
And also a kind of image, no? So the film music, he's a film composer. Right. Mostly they're nearly the last in the row. They were named in the film, music composed by, and they did it for money.
if you look just at what Rózsa did in concert houses, Bernstein played his work.
Bernstein played his work, really?
In fact, in the movie Maestro, there's a scene where Bernstein jumps in and has his first concert with the New York Philharmonic, the third in a series of 3 that Bruno Walter was meant to conduct, and then Walter got sick. And in that concert, he performed a piece by Miklós Rózsa.
Oh, really? Wow. So Bernstein loved his music,
Apparently, and Rózsa heard it, I think it was the radio broadcast, which is also why it became such a famous concert, and he heard it and he said, not even Walter could have done it like that, even though Bernstein had no time to rehearse the orchestra in that piece. So Bruno Walter played his music, and he wrote concertos for Heifetz, his violin concerto.
Wow.
For Piatigorsky and Heifetz, I think the double concerto. For Janos Starker, the cello concerto, and then for Pinky Zuckerman, the viola concerto. Those are all the names that he worked with.
It sounds like he was very good connected, no? In the US with a lot of artists.
Well, there was the Hungarian connection.
Okay, yeah.
And then he did well as a film composer, or as a composer, period. And he was, in fact, so well known as a film composer that he could get contracts with the studios that no one else could get.
Oh, really? Okay.
A lot of composers were basically treated like slaves in the studios. And he could dictate his conditions. And he said, in the summer, I take 3 months off. I go to Italy, Rapallo or Santa Margherita in the end, and I'll compose my concert music, and then I come back to Hollywood, and then I'll do your stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like a great life, no?
I don't think it was not a bad life.
So we concentrate today, we would like to talk today about his Italian holiday music. If he composed the concert music all the time in Italy, and we could do a recording there with the Deutsche Staatsphilharmonie Rheinland-Pfalz and Gregor Bühl with some orchestra pieces for him. And let's hear about this impulsive overture to a symphony concert. Honestly, the beginning remembers me a bit on Ben-Hur. There's no big difference.
Oh, totally. You could just see chariots going into the arena or gladiators.
Chariots going into the concert hall, yeah. You know. So, but this was his kind of style. I mean,
it shouldn't be too surprising that the style you can hear in his film music also seeps into his classical or concert music.
Yeah.
The difference being that if you write a piece for the concert hall, it has a beginning and an end, it goes somewhere, it has a resolution, and film music doesn't have to do that, or doesn't do that, because that's what the film is there for, which is why if you just listen to film music, unless it's arranged into a suite, it's not usually as satisfying.
Of course, film music is much shorter. No? I mean, they have a love scene of 1 minute, and then they have a fighting scene of 30 seconds, and always you need different music. I mean, it would be horrible to hear that in such a cut. Yeah. He also made the film music to El Cid, also a famous movie from 1961. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the period when he had these big blockbuster costume films, El Cid, Ben-Hur, Quo Vadis. There was a period before where he did psychological dramas. He worked a lot with Hitchcock.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then he got his start. His big first success was The Thief of Baghdad.
Okay.
And that was an English company. And with that company, he went over to the United States thinking, we'll just be there for a little while, because they had to flee England because of the Blitz.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he stayed in the United States for the rest of his life.
Yeah, but that's in general the problem for film composers, because people just remember the movie, not the composer, you know. And then you're going to the concert hall, and there they're reading the composer. I never heard about from him, you know. Ben-Hur, yes, I know. This is really a bad fate.
And look at us. We were purportedly talking about his concert hall music, and now we've been talking about movies.
Yeah,
it's just very tempting.
Right. So coming back to the concert hall compositions, because he had made a wonderful, of course, his wonderful Hungarian Serenade, Opus 25, and there, of course, is
the scherzo. Let's play.
The scherzo, not the danza. Okay, for you the scherzo, and for me the danza. Okay.
Very Solomonian of you.
Yeah, really good piece. Very nice music.
It's nice. I think that is actually one of his Leipzig compositions, one of his first compositions.
Okay.
It started out life as him having a symphony, and he went with the symphony. I think he went to Bruno Walter and then Dochnani, and showed him his work, and they both said, "It's not bad, but it's too long. If you make it shorter, we'll put it in our program."
Okay.
And so he cut it down, and then Dochnani did play it. Okay. And Richard Strauss was in town. It was in Budapest. And he had just done Frau in der Schatten or something like that. And he was in his box. And after the Rózsa piece, there was polite applause. And then Strauss apparently noticed that it was a bit tepid, the reception. And he really laid into it. And he was clapping hard from his box. And people said, "Oh, Richard Strauss likes it. Then it's got to be good." And the audience started really...
Maybe that's the kind of music that Richard Strauss always wanted, like, to compose, but was not allowed.
Well, I mean, Strauss did what he wanted to do. Rózsa says in his memoirs that he assumed that Strauss realized that he could do something for a young composer.
Okay.
And he wanted to give the audience a little push. And it helped his career. And then he went on to revise it again. And he added 2 more movements that are actually orchestrations of one of his piano pieces. And that's why it has 5 movements now, no? You have another release coming up.
Yeah. We last year we made also concerts. And there was this Sinfonia Concertante for violin, cello, and orchestra. The Rhapsody for cello and orchestra, and the Notturno Ungherese for cello and orchestra.
The Sinfonia Concertante is his double concerto.
It's a double concerto.
So it's one of those four concertos for strings.
One of the double concertos, very hard to play, really very hard to play, and is a world premiere now exclusively for you, ladies and gentlemen. I have a rough edit, not the final edit, but for 1 minute we can listen on to it.
Well, we'll talk about it again when it comes out.
Yeah. Rózsa was, wie sagt man, gut situiert?
Oh, he had money. Yeah.
Rózsa had money? Okay.
He was not lacking.
So with the film music, they really had a lot of jobs? Okay.
If you wanted to make money and you were a composer in America, you had to be successful in the film industry.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, it was a really nice adventure trip to a film composer who also made some really wonderful classical.
Stop saying film composer.
Okay, what should I say?
Composer.
Composer, okay. Thank you once again to this adventure trip of composer Miklós Rózsa. And for the end, ladies and gentlemen, we have an excerpt of the finale from Tripartita, Opus 33. See you next time.